Hey guys, it's Bailey. Welcome back to the channel and thank you so much for tuning in to what's going to be a review of the brand new Urban Decay Naked Petite Heat palette and comparing it to the original full-size Naked Heat palette. So if you want to see all that, let's go ahead and dive in. So for starters, let's get the basics out of the way. The Petite Heat comes with 6 full-size Urban Decay eyeshadows. Full sizes, and they're going to be the same exact size, 1.3 grams, I believe, which is the same exact weight you're going to get per shadow in the full-sized Heat palette. So you get 6 of those shadows in here, all of which are matte, with the exception of the one highlight shade on the end, which is what they call a demi-matte. It has just a hint of shimmer, so it's more of a shimmery highlight, just not outright overt shimmer. The price of the Petite Heat palette is $29 versus the $54 of the full size, so you are paying a little bit more per shadow in the Petite Heat than you are for the full sized. I include that here more for reference. I think at the end of all this, if you still decide you want the Petite Heat, it's not a huge deterrent for me, but wanted to include it here so you just have a reference for how it stacks up by price. Now, the concept of a more abbreviated palette is nothing new for Urban Decay. They have the Naked Basics 1 and 2 that are supposed to kind of mirror, but in a more abridged way, the full-size Naked 1 and 2. So that's nothing new. And back when I got this, Urban Decay actually was kind enough to send me the Petite Heat as well as the original full-size Heat when it first launched. But when I first got it, I felt the need to, of course, compare the shadows to see how they stack up. And of all of the Naked Basics palettes or the smaller Naked palettes, this is the one that I see the closest match to, like almost shadow for shadow. These are pretty stinking identical. And I don't know why I'm bothering to do this. I'm just going to show you swatches later on, but the similarities really are so close here, so much so that I wanted to do a little test. I'm actually wearing the Petite Heat on one side of my face and the full-sized Heat on the other. So go ahead and comment down below which side you think is which. And I also used 2 entirely different brush sets to make sure I didn't like cross-contaminate between the shadows. So there's no funny business going on there, but I did this recently on my Instagram. This is the second time I've kind of redoing this whole split face, different palettes on different sides kind of thing. And I was surprised at how many of you said you could tell the difference and may or may not have guessed the right one, because I personally couldn't see it. I think they are so similar, but now out of curiosity, I would love to know what you guys think too, and obviously I'll let you know at the end of the video or thereabouts which I'm actually wearing on what side. Now let's get into the Petite Heat shade descriptions and the shades that I think are closest in the full-sized Heat. So first off is the lightest shade here, which is called Inhale. They describe it as a cream demi-matte. Like I said, of all the shades in this palette, the rest are pretty strictly matte shades, whereas Inhale is more of a soft satin with a subtle shimmer to it. And that I find is identical to the shade Ounce from the Urban Decay Heat palette. Next up is Vibrate, and that is described as a light, soft nude matte. And it I find, again, identical to the shade Chaser from the full-sized Heat palette. Next up from that is the shade Hot Spell. They describe that as a terracotta matte, and that is closest to the full-sized Heat shade called Sauced. Really, the first 3 shades, the Petite Heat palette, are, I think, pretty identical to the first 3 shades in the full-sized Heat palette. The next shade is where it starts deviating a little bit. Wild Thing is described as a scorched orange matte, and there really is nothing quite as vibrant and orange in the full-sized Heat palette. When I do the look that I have on either eye today, I used Wild Things on the Petite Heat side, and I used He Devil in that same place on the other side. There's definitely a difference in application. Wild Thing is definitely a little bit more brighter, a little bit more orange, but especially if you are using them all in conjunction with each other, and I am wearing every shade from the Petite Heat on one of my eyes today. Once you blend them all in together like that, they really do become very similar in color. But in terms of wearing them alone, Wild Thing is definitely its own distinct orange. Next up is Heist. It is described as a rich cayenne matte, and interestingly enough, I find it is closest to the shade called Cayenne in the full-size Heat palette. This one is, again, not quite the same as Cayenne. It's a lot closer than the previous 2 that I just mentioned, Wild Thing and He Devil, but there is a little bit of a difference between the 2. Again, if you're using all of these together, I find that they will all blend in and kind of balance each other out to create very similar looking shadows. The last shade is Strike. It is described as a rich reddish brown matte, and I find it's closest to the shade Ashes in the full-sized Heat palette. These two, again, very slight differences. I would say Ashes is a little bit deeper, it's a little bit richer when applied on the eye, but you can layer strike up so it's a little bit more pigmented to get a very, very similar effect. And for all practical purposes, they have the same like burnt plum undertone that's going to function the same way, at least for me anyway, when applied to the eye. So with all those comparisons said and done, I think it's safe to say these are very, very similar palettes, or at least the mattes that you'll find in the Petite Heat are very similar to those you'll find in the full-size Heat. So much so that they create, to my eye, almost identical eye looks, but just to come clean with what they are, on my left, so your right, I believe, and in the right of the picture I showed on Instagram, is the Petite Heat. And then on the other side, of course, is the full-sized Heat. And those are the exact same shadows. I used all the shadows in the Petite Heat to create this look, and all the shadows that I just talked about in the full-sized Heat to create the look on this eye. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Now, what I love about the Petite Heat is it does take kind of the crucial match you might like from the full-sized Heat. Like if you love these orangey, rusty shades from the Heat palette, this really condenses it to your essential mattes for an on-the-go kind of palette. Urban Decay talks about this also supplementing your other shadows or even supplementing the full-size Heat. I don't think, like if you're buying this thinking that it's going to help boost your Heat palette, I don't think that will be the case because the colors are so similar. But to the extent that you want to bring some really warm, rusty mattes into your collection, this is a nice way to do it. And I do love how travel-friendly these basics or petite palettes are. That said, if you already own the Naked Heat palette and you're totally content with the shade range and you don't really need a sort of travel-friendly supplement to that, I'd say stick with this because I think you can get super, super similar looks from the matte shadows in this palette versus the Petite Heat. But if you're a Naked Heat fanatic, I could see where this is going to be a fun little palette for you. So that is it for me, guys. I hope you found this review and comparison useful. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you're going to be picking either, well, the Petite Heat, or if this has, you know, inspired you to pick up the full-size Heat palette, let me know down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye, guys.